Hello everybody and welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz Dar and I am the IT Geek. Just want to give a quick introduction into what you can expect from this first series on my channel. So this is going to be the Azure Multi-Factor Authentication series. Episode 1, we're going to have a look at Azure MFA Introduction. We're also going to look at some of the requirements around Azure Multi-Factor Authentication. Episode 2, I'll go into some initial setup in the Azure Admin Portal. We'll also take a look at configuring conditional access policies and some of the requirements around that. Episode 3, we'll look at the additional MFA settings you can have once you've configured it. And finally, we'll go into episode 4 and look at enabling password write-back for self-service password reset. If you have any questions, please leave a comment or feel free to hit me up on my Twitter page @ShabazzdAr. Look forward to seeing you in episode 1. So we're going to jump straight into episode 1 of the series, which is an introduction into multi-factor authentication, some of the requirements. So in this episode, I will discuss what multi-factor authentication is in Azure. I'll explain a little around how it works, the different types of authentication methods that are on offer in Azure for the users and for admins to configure. And then I'll explain a little around what the MFA requirements are. So we'll get straight into what is Azure Multi-Factor Authentication. So for those of you who are not familiar, it's essentially the process of identifying users by validating 2 or more characteristics that are unique to that user. So one of those is obviously your Microsoft 365 email address you use to log into the tenancy. Now this is classed as something you know. So then you need the second characteristic for validating, which can either be one of the following 2 things. Something you have, such as a trusted device that is not easily duplicated, like a phone or a hardware key. And then something you are. So this will be biometrics like a fingerprint or facial recognition. Windows Hello, for example, on Windows 10. It also gives you increased security. So Azure Multi-Factor Authentication, it's got increased security for users when accessing the 365 tenant and the Azure tenant. It gives you an extra layer of protection and safeguards your access to data and applications within Microsoft 365 and other third-party vendors. And it still maintains simplicity for users, so it doesn't complicate things for them. It's very straightforward to use, as we'll see when we get further into the series. So we now know what multi-factor authentication is. We now want to take a look at how it works. So I'm just going to go do this in a diagram form. So what we have is we have different type of access requests or signals coming in. And they can be user and locations, devices such as tablets, Windows devices, or any sort of mobile device. We have applications looking to verify access. And we also have real-time disk requests coming in. What will happen is that they'll make that first authentication attempt. Like I said, they could be using a username of some sort, like the 365 email address. And they'll come in and they'll hit the Microsoft 365 or Azure platform. And they'll basically be required to make that second form of authentication we mentioned. And here, when they make that second request to verify the access, it can go one of 2 ways. If they make an unsuccessful attempt by putting in the wrong authentication method, they'll be blocked access and they won't be able to access the information they need. However, if they successfully verify, they will be allowed access and both forms of authentication will be successful, which means they can move on and access the applications and data within their tenancy. So now let's look at the different types of authentication available within the MFA. As an admin, you can specify within the Azure AD portal which authentication methods you want to allow users to choose from. Once you've made those decisions, users can then decide from those different options which best suits them. So smartphone users can download the Microsoft Authenticator app, and this is available on Android, iOS or Windows devices. And this is a very, very simple app to use. You essentially register your Microsoft 365 account with the application. Every time you want to make that second form of authentication, or every time you log into the Microsoft 365 portal or the Outlook app and so on, you'll get a little pop-up that asks you to allow or to not allow the request. So if it is you that's made that request, you click on allow. Obviously, if it isn't, you don't allow it. For those users that don't have a smartphone, there is a text authentication method available. So this is for users that might have an older model of phone. And essentially what this does is, this is a text message the user receives, which has a numeric code on it. And the user has to enter that code into the pop-up or the tenant in the portal when they are requested for it. Now the important part to remember with this is that mobile number that they want to get that message on has to be registered within the Azure AD portal on their account by an admin. Move on to the next authentication method. So this is probably the most latest addition to the authentication methods, and it's a hardware or auth token. So this is the physical hardware token or a key that you use to authenticate. So to use this method of authentication, you would first need some OAuth tokens from a vendor of your choice. I believe the vendors include DeepNet Security, Token2 and Yubico. Once you purchase the keys, they then send you a file with a secret key, serial number, a time interval, manufacturer and model for each token. Then, to assign the tokens to the users, you edit the file you sent to add users' UPN or user principal name, which is normally the email address. And then you upload the file into the Azure portal. So when we get further into the episodes within this series, I'll show where that can be done. I don't have a hardware authentication token, unfortunately, for this. However, I can show you on the portal where it needs to go. So the final method of authentication is another one similar to the text message one. For users that don't have access to a smartphone or even a mobile phone, they can receive an automated call on a registered phone number again. So the way this works is, it's normally a landline it can be. The user can authenticate by receiving an automated call from Microsoft and following the instructions that they're given. So it might be to press the hash key or a number or something like that. And they can then use that. So if they've got an office phone and they don't have a mobile, or they don't have a company mobile and they don't want to use their personal mobile, they can then use a designated landline and authenticate that way. As with most services within Azure, multi-factor authentication also has some requirements. So from a licensing perspective, to get the full use of multi-factor authentication, you need a paid for subscription of either Azure AD Premium 1 or Azure AD Premium 2. What I'd like to do is just quickly show you the difference between the two and also the free version, so you can just understand what the different features are in each, and it gives you an idea of what the benefits are of each. So let's start off with Azure AD, the free version. In this table, you can see that you're limited to 500,000 directory objects. You can get identity management capabilities and device registration. Single sign-on can be assigned to 10 apps per user. You have some business-to-business collaboration capabilities. Self-service password reset is available, however, to cloud users only, so you cannot use it for hybrid users. Azure AD Connect Sync is available. It utilizes the security defaults with the multi-factor authentication, which is limited. And you also get some basic security reporting. So if we move on to Azure AD Premium 1, we can see the first difference is that you have unlimited directory objects. You have everything within Azure AD free list there, as well as application proxy, dynamic groups, on-premises write back for password reset and change and unlock, two-way sync between on-premises AD and Azure AD, multi-factor authentication, conditional access based on health and location. I won't go through all the lists there, but you can see that there's a massive difference between the Azure AD free version and Azure AD Premium 1. There's even Cloud App Security integration in the last one there. So a lot of differences and a lot of benefits, a lot more benefits even, to using the paid version of Azure AD license. Finally, let's look at Azure AD Premium 2. This list is obviously a little bit smaller because you have everything offered by Azure AD Premium 1, so all those items in the table before that. But the three additional items you have with Azure AD Premium 1 are identity protection, privileged identity management, PIM, which I will discuss more in future videos, and also access reviews. So if we hop back to the requirements for MFA, we've just gone through the licensing there. And I think I mentioned earlier that although the free version of Azure AD does allow users to utilize MFA, it has very limited capabilities and uses the security defaults within Azure AD. Another important requirement that you have to have at least one of are the authentication methods, which I discussed earlier. So these methods are available to be able to register to MFA once it's enabled. One item to note around the Azure AD free version, you can only use the mobile application, so the Microsoft Authenticator app, to register. But once you have registered, users can go into their Office 365 security settings and change the authentication method. That's obviously if the admin has enabled those specific methods, so text, phone, and the hardware ID. Finally, you need to ensure all applications and services are using modern authentication. So this means no legacy applications, for example, Outlook 2010, and also no legacy protocols, including IMAP, POP3, and SMTP. And that concludes the first episode of the multi-factor authentication series. Thank you very much for watching. I hope everyone learned something. If you do have any questions, please leave me a comment, or you can hit me up on my Twitter page, which is @ShabazDar. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.